Hello, BookTube, and welcome to your Daily Penguin, our tour through my Penguin Classic wall. Totally, we're at random fields now. We're not doing the world of classical literature anymore. You want another hello to them? What do you want, Frida? You're squirming all over the place. We were doing a couple of thematically grouped things, but not anymore. Now we're just doing random stuff, and our last couple have been great. Our last couple have been right up at the top of my favorite books. A Penguin classic, a classic black spine Penguin classic of the King James Bible, and a Penguin classic of the unabridged Boswell's Life of Johnson. And today we go back to Penguin Classic Deluxe editions. We did a bunch of those a little bit ago. Here we go back to another one, and this one, it's less than those two, because pretty much anything would be, but not by much. Not by much at all. This is a beautiful thing that I got in the mail from the publisher. And I got rid of the pub sheet, but this was, let me see here, 2015, so before we were talking to each other. And this is the novels of Sherlock Holmes. This is Arthur Conan Doyle's Sherlock Holmes novels, so not a big volume of the short stories, but instead a big volume of the novels. Look at this lovely thing that has all kinds of marquee Holmesian characters and scenarios. And you've got the French flaps and the deckled edges, and this extends to one huge picture of the world of Sherlock Holmes, which is just amazing. It's just amazing. Does this tell me? The art is by Adam Simpson, and this has the classic four Sherlock Holmes novels: Study in Scarlet, Sign of the Four, Valley of Fear, and The Hound of the Baskervilles. And there you see the full range, because Holmesians, of course, know every word of these things. But normal readers have never even heard of the Valley of Fear. It's been around for 100 years and has high praise from some of its critic readers, whereas everyone in the world has heard of the Hound of the Baskervilles, even though The Hound of the Baskervilles is, in my opinion, a much weaker novel than any of the other three. It's so dramatically compelling that you don't care. When you're reading it, you don't care. I love there have been many textual breakdowns of The Hound of the Baskervilles citing how little it actually makes sense, how little it holds together in the resolution. When you get to the big resolution, how much of it might be just simply wrong, and the reader would never know. Holmes and Watson would never know. But there's a very different feel, I think, to Arthur Conan Doyle, the novelist, as opposed to Arthur Conan Doyle, the short story writer, especially when it's Holmes short stories. And I go back and forth, just on a regular basis. I have forever, on which I prefer. I love the company of this author on the page. I think he's fantastically friendly on the page. So I don't really mind. I will read even there are long stretches of the Valley of Fear and of Sign of the Four where there's nothing to do with Holmes or London or anything like that, and I'll still read them because of the way Doyle writes. But with the short stories, you don't get that. They're more concentrated. So I don't know one way or another, and I wish that this were a video in which I was choosing. I wish there were a big, fat Penguin Classic Deluxe Edition, as big as the Boswell and the Bible, the volumes that we've seen in the last two episodes of your Daily Penguin. I wish there were a Penguin Classic Deluxe Edition that big of the collected short stories of Sherlock Holmes. Another absolutely natural thing that Penguin should do. They should do the collected Sherlock Holmes stories with Sidney Paget illustrations. That shouldn't be left to other reprint houses to do. Penguin should be the one to do that. But I'll take what I can get. There are many, many Penguin volumes of collected short stories, and then there's this, a nice big volume of the collected novels, which is so much fun. Again, like so many things that I bring down off the shelf to do the Daily Penguin, this also presents an active temptation to me. Even though I know these stories backwards and forwards, there is no reason for me to reread these, except on special occasions for read-alongs or very isolated, fun events. And yet, when I pull down a book like this, or the King James Bible, or Boswell's Life of Johnson, I'm immediately tempted, or the Diary of Samuel Pepys, I'm immediately tempted to dive in and start reading, and I can't afford the time to do that. So there's all these A-list things, Steve's A-list, presents serious temptations as well as things that I can recommend. Of course, I can recommend this volume. It's beautiful. The introduction is by my sometime Washington Post colleague, Michael Durda, and it is unfortunately weak. I mean, he doesn't write any bad prose, ever, when he writes about books. But when somebody comes to you and says, hello, old chap, we'd like you to write a 10-page introduction to a collected Sherlock Holmes volume, like I've mentioned in other cases with other works of literature, there are two roads that you could take there. One is to write something that virtually writes itself. Just go onto autopilot. Such a thing will start with the foggy streets of London and 221B Baker Street, and it will invariably end with the games afoot. And it will go through a very canned Stations of the Cross type of summary. And then there's the other kind of introduction that won't do that will make a case, that will be pointed, that will be original thought. And unfortunately, in this particular case, Durda chooses the first kind. So his introduction is very much along those lines. It's intensely predictable from beginning to end. It's well put, but it's not the same as, for instance, Bantam did a 2-volume collected Sherlock Holmes in mass market paperback years and years and years ago. Brown mass market paperbacks. Those books had all the short stories and all of the novels. It was a complete Sherlock Holmes. And the introduction for that 2-volume mass market set, which I don't believe I have anymore. I can't believe I would ever get rid of them, but I think I did. I used to have those 2 volumes. I used to have doubles. I used to have a box set of them. But the introduction there, I believe, was by Lauren Esselman, and it was terrific. It wasn't anything, there was nothing lazy about it at all. And unfortunately, Durda's introduction here is lazy. It's good, but it's lazy. I imagine that the people who write such things console themselves by saying, well, yes, it's lazy. Yes, it's easy to do. It knocks itself together in a half an hour, but it may be the first such thing that some new reader reads, right? Every one of us comes to literature somewhere through some keyhole. He might have thought, well, it needs to be this basic and this predictable because it is going to introduce people to this world and this author and these characters. And I guess there's some justification in doing that. So I'm not angry about it or wish it stripped from the book or anything. I just, when I read it, I reread it again when I pull this volume down off the shelf. I just think, okay, well, this isn't meant for me at all. This may very well serve the audience that it's meant for, but it's not meant for me. But the rest of it, your Penguin Classic for today is a very strong recommend. These are the novels of Sherlock Holmes, and they are very different in their feel and their atmosphere, and of course in their pacing, than the short stories. And if you read Sherlock Holmes, you're going to want to know what Doyle does in both of those registers. And this is a wonderful volume to have them in. So your Daily Penguin is a recommend. Of course, I have many shards off this particular jam. I have this book, but I also have many different editions of The Hound of the Baskervilles, which I don't get me wrong about my criticism. There's a chance that if any of the so-called expositional characters in the course of The Hound of the Baskervilles are simply lying, then the whole thing would shake out differently, and we'll never know. It's not like there's much objective proof given of anything. It's all hearsay. We're taking huge amounts of the resolution of that plot on the word of characters involved who might be lying, which I wouldn't so much mind, but it's unlike Holmes not to point that out. But despite that fact, I love the book. Absolutely love it. So I have many different editions of Hound of the Baskervilles, and this is just one of them. On my own, with a Holmes novel, that is, if I feel like reading a long Sherlock Holmes story, Hound of the Baskervilles is the one that I reach for. And if I do, I reach for an illustrated version, of course, the Sidney Paget illustrations. I don't reach for one without. But I'm very glad to have this anyway, and it'll work for you. So that's your Daily Penguin for today. It's another A-list Steve book. I don't know how long this is going to continue. We'll see. We'll find out tomorrow. So I will wrap this up for now, but I will see you then. Thank you, BookTube.